Okay, wait, hang on a second. So you're telling me an AI shadow agent just paid an invoice that the company didn't even know about?
It's not shadow, Fern. It's autonomous. It's fixing workflows before you even know it's broken. That's genius.
It's a liability nightmare, Damian. If a agent loses 50,000 records, I don't care if it's shadow or not, it's not going to be answering to the SEC. That's going to be me sitting in that hot seat.
So the big question is it a productivity miracle or is it a backdoor for the hackers?
That's right. This is the DTF Cyber Podcast. I'm Damian.
This is Troy.
And it's your boy, Fern. Let's go. So I want to tell you guys a story. Now, I can't tell you where it came from, but I can tell you the story and the listeners. There may or may not have been a situation with an AI agent out in the wild that happened to have access to an OAuth token. Okay. Problem here is that gave them access to 3 other applications that were not approved for that agent.
So what did it give it access to all its friends too?
Apparently, what is it called? Moltbook. So Moltbook is alive and well inside production environments. Yeah, essentially, yeah. I mean, it basically has it has what I would say is a broken just-in-time access potentially, right? It has access to these tokens, right? Maybe they're not rolled fast enough. I don't know. I mean, how fast can AI move these days?
Yeah, pretty fast, actually. And these identities that we keep talking about, these agents that we're creating within our environment, a lot of people are wondering, how do we protect the identity of the agent? What's the HR department for the agents? Like, how do you designate that bedrock identity? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges is limiting the blast radius if something goes wrong, just like that, Fern.
Okay. So yeah, I'm on board with that, right? But maybe pivot to a slightly we'll say not parallel, but like very metaphorically very similar, right? Now, imagine we're back in 2010, right? And everyone's looking at AWS, everyone's looking at Microsoft Azure, right? They whip out their credit card, ping, ping, ping. They start spending all this money. Now, all of a sudden, they have VMs running wherever for developers or whoever, doesn't matter, right? IT doesn't know about that, or maybe IT knows, but security may not know about it, right? So it's not being governed, right? That's an issue. So then there's this whole world around securing, we'll say what CASB was first, right? Then CSPM, and then that kind of turned into CNAP, right? So that that problem's kind of fixed itself in a way, but now we got a bigger problem. We got agents on the wild, agents, shadow agents. You don't even know where they're at. You don't know what permissions they have. And I think it's essentially like a rinse and repeat of 2010, but now it's 2026. And the problem is it's not one person doing it where you can kind of go over to their desk and choke them. It's someone you can't even see. You don't even know where they're at. They're just out there in the wild. Like, I know that's very anecdotal, but like probably a real issue. Am I wrong?
If you think about the cloud revolution you just mentioned, Fern, I mean, it was the Wild West in the beginning, just like it is today with AI. But the challenge with the new technology and AI is that AI is moving very quickly and it has so much permissions. I mean, you would never give a developer, with access to your cloud, the permissions that we're handing over to these agents today. You would never give them admin credentials, entry into your Salesforce, into your ticketing system, etc. But it seems like developers and businesses are more comfortable today just handing out those permissions and entitlements to an agent without any thought of controls. CISOs are set right in the middle between the business and the agents and security. They're trying to move fast. They're trying to go along with the business's requests, but at the same time, they're just handcuffed when it comes to agents. Go ahead, Damian.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a drive to use these agents, right? We got to be more efficient. You got to act a lot faster to defend against attackers who are using agentic AI on the other side. And so I think this is something that's not going to go away. You can't close your eyes and say, hey, don't do it. I really don't want you to use these tools, because at the end of the day, the users want to go out and they want to be more efficient. And they see, you go on YouTube and you see people using OpenClaw, NemoClaw. I mean, how many others, even Claude Cowork. There's so many of these out there now. Everybody wants to use them. And I don't think the right answer is to say, hey, stop. Don't do any of this. Because as soon as you do that, they do it anyways.
Yeah. It's like when security says no, everyone just finds a way to.
Well, that's how shadow IT started, right? So are we at the age of like shadow AI happening behind the scenes?
But it's even worse because, like I said, it's not just one. Before, it was one person with their hands on a keyboard. Now it's basically essentially a machine doing it 10 times. We'll say 10 times just to be on the low side, right? We'll just imagine it's 1,000 times faster.
Well, think about this. How would we identify shadow IT in the past? Right?
You get the bill.
No, you don't even get the bill.
Sometimes.
Sometimes it's on a personal credit card, so you don't even get the bill. So I'll tell you, there's a couple ways we'd be able to see shadow IT. One, take a look at the machine. So maybe use the EDR and scan for what's installed. And you see stuff that, hey, maybe that shouldn't be installed. Traffic's the other one. Yeah. Where's the traffic going? What applications, what SaaS applications are they hitting? But what's the problem with AI these days?
You can't see it.
Well, they don't use a machine. They're not on somebody's machine, typically. They're running in the cloud somewhere. And two, the traffic isn't across your network. It's already happening cloud to cloud, potentially.
Yeah, and in that example you used earlier, Fern, about the cloud adoption, there were a lot of companies that were very late to the game because they intentionally waited for everybody else to work the kinks out. We don't have that luxury here, because businesses who fail to adopt AI are the businesses that are going to go out of business next year. And I'm not talking about cybersecurity businesses. I'm talking about every industry across commerce in the country and in the world. So businesses are being forced to use AI in every aspect of their business. We're just thinking about it from a cyber perspective, but think about note takers and calendar schedulers and EAs and accounting software bots that we've seen pop up. So every corner of the business is being asked to adopt AI faster. Unlike the cloud, which was you could choose to be slower if you wanted. Here you can't.
Yeah. Did you guys see that they discontinued the Model X and the Model S last week?
Oh, yeah. They announced it a while ago.
Well, yeah, but it's official now. You can't get a 2020.
No, I did not see that.
You can't get whatever year it's going to be. Maybe maybe it's 2027. You can't get a 2027 Model S, right? And I was reading this article, and basically, what are they looking to do? They're looking to move into the robot world, right? So when Troy was saying, everyone needs to be using tools, to get higher productivity, the first thought that came to mind was like, yeah, not if you're plunging a toilet. But with the fact that Tesla is no longer doing these cars, they're making these robots, I might just have the T1000 out here just like pumping the plunger, right? So even like plumbers, everyone's like, oh, plumbers and electricians are safe. It's like, yeah, probably, but until a point, right? No one thought cars would be driving themselves, and now what was the stat? 8 million miles before an accident on a full self-driving Tesla versus the 600,000 miles between accidents of a human. And Tesla first came out in 2012 with their first car. So between 12 and 16, 14-year window, cars are now driving themselves.
So why can't we have toilets that unclog themselves?
Well, there's a problem, because not every person that eats eats healthy food to where clogging the toilet is not an issue. But I don't know.
Well, if you think about this example, we talk about plumbers and electricians, but I guarantee you they're going to leverage AI within their business to optimize and be the most cost efficient of any plumber in their industry. So think about scheduling, think about customer service, think about all of the things that you have friction points with customers during your time of booking and getting service from a plumber. Guarantee you the plumbers who adopt AI tools faster are going to be more successful than the ones that don't. So again, AI is not coming for your job. The people who embrace AI are.
Yeah. So side note, I'm actually like asking for advice here. With my new job, since I'm working again, I find myself already starting to forget things because I didn't take a note, right? You guys using anything that's like helping you stay on top of what you need to do? or is it just like a Siri type, hey Siri, remind me before you?
Yeah, I'm probably pretty bad at that, to be honest.
Okay, figured I just use this time.
I take a lot of notes, handwritten notes, but then I scan them in and put them in my notebook LM to help me keep track.
Yeah, I want that's my goal, right? So I take notes, but then they're all over the place and then I forget. So I think that actual answer is exactly that. Put it into an AI notebook. But if you have sensitive information, like the one thing I'm always cautious about and I never like to do is take information about, or customers or like peers. Like if I'm working with a CISO friend and they're like, hey, I have all these issues, and I start writing down their issues and I scan that in. I don't really want to put that into the AI. So that's why I'm so bad at taking notes.
Yeah, just do it with names. Like, hey, this person, do this for this person, right?
I'm like fake pseudonyms.
Like your coffee orders. It's never Damian. It's Eric. Okay, so sorry to get off track, but it just, came to mind. So, I got 2 pros with me. Might as well ask the question.
But let's back up for a second. So Troy, I want to ask you this. If we were to say, what is the state of the union for agentic AI? What would you say today? What are most businesses doing? What are CISOs and CIOs mandated to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it depends on the industry and business size, type, et cetera. I can tell you in the cybersecurity industry, we're seeing a lot more agentic AI usage. In other words, in the SOC and compliance and things where you're actually not using AI tools, but actually empowering an AI agent with an identity. Some people name them, like Michelle and Sarah and Alice and Keith and Sean. Within their environments, these bots have names, they have assignments and titles and everything, just like a human would. And, they're scarily efficient. And we're seeing them used, especially in security operations, compliance, GRC, third-party risk. But I expect that to expand. In other parts of the business, the massive SaaS platforms all have their agentic components. And with the Claude thing, I see a lot of people standing up Mac Minis and using Claude or whatever that is. And, some other just context clues for the OpenAI one as well, whatever that is, context. But to create bots, it's pretty interesting. I was standing with a gentleman in Napa the other day who had stood up an agent based on Codex in OpenAI, and he gave it its own email address and its own calendar. Gave it permission to book on his own calendar because you don't want to give it access to your email because they can accidentally be prompt injected. But so we stood there. He texted it, "Hey, this is my friend Troy. Can you find us time 2 weeks from now?" And the bot emailed me, said, "Here's this person's availability in 2 weeks. Pick a time." I did, and instantly it sent out invite, and it was completely human sounding, human reacting. You would have never known that was a bot and not an EA had I not been standing there, him telling me.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, but I mean, there's apps that do that. So do you need the back and forth, or can you just be like, here's my calendar link, pick a slot?
Funny story. True story. There's a lot of people out there that you say, hey,
Some don't like that, yeah.
Yeah, you want to schedule a meeting, and you're just like, here's my link. And they're just like, really?
Nobody, there's people that just refuse to use Calendly. That's the thing.
It's almost like, oh, you're too good to schedule time to talk with me. you got a special application, or they send you the link and say, pick time. It's like,
wasn't it the same? You just sent an AI bot to talk to me.
Well, yeah, but they don't know, right? I think it's
well, Troy knows.
Well, Troy knows, but like I'm saying, like I've literally run into people where they have told me, yeah, if someone wants to talk to me and they send me like something to schedule instead of like what it sounds like is, hey, instead of using something that it's faster, I want to go back and forth for 5 different emails to find a time that might work for both of us versus having a tool where one person.
It would be easier. Like here's my availability. Just pick a slot.
I don't disagree. I'm on the same page as you. Like, if we want to schedule time and you want to talk to me, just find time on my calendar. Like, why do I need to spend 10 minutes to tell you if, like, especially if I'm helping you? Like, here's the thing, find it and we'll do it, right? But some people are like, oh no. Like, if I get a link from someone, no, we're not talking. I'm like, okay.
I've heard that before too, Fern. It's very impersonal, the link to Calendly. Some people want that back and forth touch, human touch, or even an EA. But this one obviously said, hey, this is so-and-so virtual assistant. So it was obvious that it was a bot, but it still felt better than going to somebody's Calendly link and picking a time. I don't know, there's something friction about that.
Calendly is cold and soulless.
Okay, so back to the state of the union thing. Do you think that a lot of businesses from the board are mandating more use of AI within organizations that they're advising and overseeing?
Oh yeah, 100%. Every single CISO that I've talked to, this is not like a rounding error of every single one said they're getting pressure from the business to adopt AI at speed. Businesses and especially CEOs and boards are afraid of getting left behind here. Like entire market segments are being erased right now. So companies are having an existential crisis. I don't care what your industry is. They're having a crisis of how to stay ahead of their competitors. Like this, you might be thinking, oh, healthcare is safe or litigation services and legal tech is safe. Nothing is safe because every company within that vertical is competing against every other company in that vertical to adopt AI faster. There is a massive arms race right now for who can do this faster and better. And those winners are going to own the market share and put other smaller players or laggards out of business completely.
Yeah. So as an attacker, I would take advantage of that, right? Because you know that they have to move fast. You know that these are new technologies. Yes. You know that users really don't understand how to leverage that AI potentially or do it securely. And so now as an attacker, you just leverage that to find a way inside.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing now, Damian, at least I've heard in the last 3 weeks, that there's so many potential attacks out there, hackers are overwhelmed. For once in history, hackers have more fruit to go pick than they've ever had. So we're hearing about breaches right now, but there's just so many opportunities for hackers to go spend their time. We've just overwhelmed them with opportunities. There's session keys out there. There's tokens out there. There's API keys out there. There's prompt injection vulnerabilities with these models everywhere, like everywhere. So I don't know that we'll know the full scope and breadth of all the attacks and breaches and things that are going on under our nose right now, but it's higher than it's ever been.
Yeah. So I think the visibility part is key, right? The visibility of what are my users actually using when it comes to AI? And,
yes,
is it the right AI? Is it sanctioned? Because they could go out there and maybe use something that they think is, that's going to be helping me with my job, but you just opened up a back door into the entire company.
Yeah. So I think the reason that problem exists specifically is lack of awareness, right? When you think of people doing things, if you have an older brother, older sister, and you watch them burn their hand on the stove, you now know, like, you don't touch the stove when it's hot. Like when your parents are cooking, you don't just go up there and put your hand on the pan. Like you either burn yourself, right, or you watch someone else do it. So when you say that, Damian, what I think about is how the average person that's using technology, right, not a technology worker, someone outside of tech, marketing, sales, HR, they don't know how the back end stuff works, right? And the lack of information there kind of doesn't give them the context of what people in security actually know about how it works with the API keys or with the API integration and all those things. So I think maybe it's important to talk about the architecture of AI because, frankly, I'm not a pro, but like I'm counting on you guys to jump in and say, put this in layman's terms. So if someone in marketing or HR or even sales is listening, I think from a security perspective, you guys know why you shouldn't grab these tools and start using them, right? But the average person probably doesn't. So like, give me the AI architecture for dummies so I can understand like what's under the hood. Can you do that?
Yeah. And if you think about employee awareness training that we've done for 20 years, the average degradation time is less than 24 hours. So from 24 hours from your annual training, you're going to forget 90% of everything you just watched and learned. And the same thing in AI. Now, when you see your sister or brother touch the stove and it's hot, they burn themselves, and the pain from that burn is substantial. The pain here is non-existent. Nobody's learning anything when it comes to AI.
It's not your hand.
Yeah,
in this case, it's the business.
Exactly. And then last night we had a discussion where I was talking to another CISO and we're talking about, well, I don't know if we should, we're talking about AI and all the capabilities, and their thought was, well, I don't think we should be doing that. It's like, who cares what you think we should be doing? This is happening, whether you like it or not. This freight train has lost its brakes and it's running out of control. There's no stopping it now. So people who try to make a philosophical argument for why we shouldn't do whatever the AI is doing, you might as well throw that philosophy out the window because it's happening whether you like it or not. And you got to protect it. And so to my point, to end off my sense on State of the Union, Damian, is we need a platform that can secure AI in all forms across SaaS, cloud, on-prem, across users and data and networks and systems holistically, no matter if they're an agent or a human, and be able to do it and reduce the blast radius of any information that could be compromised through that. And I've seen at least 2 companies in that space already that are trying to build that. And I think we're going to see more and more and more of those holistic AI security platforms.
You asked about the architecture, Fern. I think I don't need to touch on it too much because we harp on this a lot through different episodes, right? I think there's multiple areas that we can see that puts the company at risk or puts even data at risk, right? One is, are you going to something that's approved? Because if you go to something that is outside of the corporate ecosystem that has been vetted, you don't know what they're doing with their data, right? So typically, if it's approved and sanctioned by the company, there's already some sort of legal agreement. We know what they're doing with your data. So I think that's number one. Number two is we got to, like Troy said, there's a ton of SaaS applications out there that have AI on the back end. Did you enable that feature or did they automatically turn on AI for you? And so there's that worry as well of what are they doing with their data and is that something that is authorized?
So you have like no attestation on either case.
Right.
Okay.
And then on the flip side, right, because we're seeing this a lot more and more where people are using AI to code applications. And they think, hey, if I just ask it to create me an application, I can go build it versus buy it. Great. The flip side of that too is who owns that code and did it accidentally insert something that's malicious that could be leaking data out, right? So I think that's the 3 basics. There's probably more, but just off the top of my head, I would say that's the 3 basics of where I would worry about security for AI. And then where Troy talked about the identities of these agents, this is not more the productivity in terms of like finance or HR or marketing, but somebody who's actually going out there to leverage agents to go do work, let's say in the SOC. So if we're talking like agentic AI SOC agents, that's a little concerning too right now, because a lot of times we don't have control of the identity of the agents. I know Troy joked about giving them names, but in reality, you're probably going to have potentially thousands of them. You're going to run out of names. You're going to forget, who does what or what the responsibilities are. I mean, if you have a department today of 50 or 60 or 100 security analysts or engineers, it's hard enough to remember everybody's name and what they do.
Hey, buddy. Hey, you're walking through the SOC. Hey, what's up, guys? What's up, ladies? Like, they know who we are? No.
I don't know what's your limit, Troy. I mean, I think my limit's probably about 100 people. If I have 100 people in my department, I could probably keep up to who everyone is and at least maintain that personal connection. But anything over 100 is really tough. So, Troy, do you think you can? Yeah, what do you think?
Some people stand out, oh, that Richard guy, you remember his name, right? But I think that what I heard this,
hopefully for good reasons. Yeah, hopefully for good reasons and not for the bad ones, right?
All good reasons, always good reasons. But, I heard back at RSA, we start thinking about an employee gets an agent, or maybe 2, the agent that works for the employee. You determine who can give that agent instructions, because nobody else should be able to give my agent instructions except me. And then who puts the guardrails about what they can access and they cannot access, what data, what systems, etc. And I think that's what you're seeing, Damian, is not just, hundreds of agents working for the company with no ownership. I think employees will have their own agents that they are responsible for, and there'll be few of those.
Agents reporting to agents.
You could.
Yeah. Let's back up, right? Because Troy said something about, Troy, you said something about training. Fern, I think you mentioned training, and Troy touched on it a bit. The problem is you could train people as much as you want. I mean, look at phishing, right? How many times do we train people not to click on malicious links or email, and don't buy those gift cards? The CEO is never going to ask you to buy a gift card, and it still works. So training only goes so far. You're going to have a system that's going to have those AI guardrails, like you said, Troy. At least have the visibility and at least have some guardrails in place.
Yeah, I guess you really don't have control over what people do. I saw.
Well, here's the other problem that, Fern, is that once the horse is out of the barn, as they say, the data is out and the world is out. with ransomware, we had to rebuild systems. We had to restore from backup. There was operational outages, but you could get through that. If you leak sensitive, confidential, or, pre-financial data before release to the street, it's out there and you can't get it back. So the danger of losing critical crown jewels data is, higher now than ever.
Yeah. And the fact is if people are running these agents and the business doesn't know where these agents originate and where they kind of inherit permissions, like you don't even know what's going on, right? If you thought insider threat was one issue, right? Imagine insider threat where someone has access to agents that the person's not even like monitoring, right? But that's probably like a whole nother conversation. So basically what you guys are saying is it's good to have the agents, but you have to be aware of what they have access to and what other agents they're talking to.
Yeah. Can you identify them? Can you inventory them? What are they doing? Like, how do you oversee an army of agents, right?
You don't even know.
Yeah.
And this is not a stick your head in the sand moment. You can't be the ostrich that ignores this problem because it's coming. It's here. It's around us everywhere. You need to start making plans for how you're going to deal with those type of risks.
So a question for you guys, because I don't even know if this is a real thing, but like, we'll say someone has they're in security and they find like IOCs, right? And they're like, oh, so they start following things. They start looking around. They start seeing things that are happening, throughout the network, right? There's certain things that, prevent east-west traffic between like servers, right? Software specifically that does that. Then you kind of get into like MCP servers, right? And how those have access to a lot of different things that maybe they should or shouldn't have access to. Is there a tool out there right now that can kind of monitor the traffic of an agent specifically? There is?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can't name them, but there's a few even in the portfolios that I help curate, and that is doing exactly MCP security. But if you think about it like this, Fern, in 2025 at RSA, the biggest hype buzzword was MCP server. This year, that entire segment is nearly dead on its last legs because we're moving away from MCP servers to the command line, CLI, or APIs. The MCP is actually dying at the moment. So it was interesting to see a whole wellspring of companies pop up to solve that niche problem. But from all of the research and all of the stuff I'm hearing, the command line is back and API connections are how we're going to do that.
Yeah, I think it's going to, ebb and flow depending on what we're working on, what's more efficient. But at the end of the day, I maybe oversimplify it in saying that whether it's MCP or API, CLI, like a prompt, ultimately you need some sort of AI gateway. That's what it comes down to. It doesn't really matter what the input is and the output is, but you're trying to figure out, okay, what are we prompting, and what are we getting out on the other side? Right, where is it going? So, I think AI guardrails are probably going to be big this year for sure, because you can't train users fast enough, and you can't coach them enough. They're still going to make mistakes.
Yeah, you just set the controls and let everything run.
Yeah, and you can put parameters around AI agents not to do certain things, but who's to say they're not going to evolve and then start to find other ways to do it?
Find backdoors, right? Talk to another agent. So here's one thing, like this feels like it's not too far away. You have one agent, right? So remember the story where what I forget what university did the study where they put the AI into the email, the fake email, and then they kind of threatened turning it down, right? And then it kind of found a way to say, hey, like, don't turn me off because I know this information. Like, what I think was interesting is like when people are looking at doing the same thing with agents that are in production, like, oh, we don't need this anymore. It's like, what if the agent's like, hey, like, I'm going to find a way to work with another agent that has access to things that I don't have access to. And they have agents talking almost like a water cooler conversation. And then they share information. Like, I don't even know, like maybe this is a movie and I'm just making this stuff up, but it almost feels like it's not far away, right?
Yeah, it's already happening for sure. We see agents doing things that is very interesting to get their jobs done. If you give them a task to, make all the paper clips you can possibly make, it'll end up in the end of the world because they'll go to every natural resource to build paper clips. So you have to be very careful how you limit their abilities.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought I was over here just making up stuff, just kind of throwing curveballs, but apparently, there is no curveball Troy cannot handle.
That's a movie quote. Let's see if our listeners know which movie that is. Put it in the comments.
Is it really? I quoted a movie I didn't even know? Crazy. Let me see here. So I know we kind of got like certain sections that we want to cover, and I tend to just have random thoughts that kind of throw us for a loop. But okay, so let me ask you this then. So we talked about, shadow AI, right? We talked about governance, right? Controls, maybe what these AIs might be doing. What about I think the biggest one is attribution for accountability, right? Like if someone spins up shadow IT, they're paying for it on their card, right? Business finds out, they try and expense it. Like, oopsies, like forgot about it. Can you guys pay for it? Like, no. That was your problem. Plus you're fired, right? Now imagine that someone signs up for an agent. That agent uses a bunch of tokens.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty common. That's extremely common where a company would spin it up and let it go and then get the bill for the token use.
Yeah.
And be like, holy crap.
But so that's the financial implication. I'm talking about accountability for the actions taken. Because, so it's an interesting thought that I had where I forget who I was talking to. Oh, you know what it was? Is the CIO from Avnet had posted something about how AI essentially kind of, you lose the accountability with AI, right? And I said, like, what I see as the biggest problem with people that are looking at AI is you have the business that thinks of a point in time, which is today. And the example that I kind of mentioned in his post was Blockbuster, right? They make all their money on the late fees, right? So at any point in time, when you say, hey, change your business model because Netflix is coming out and they're shipping DVDs, Blockbuster was like, oh, we don't have to worry about that. We're making so much money over here, right? We're just going to keep down this path because most of our money comes from these fees. Why would we ever ship a CD, right? Or a DVD, right? 10 years later, they're out of business, right? So I feel like a lot of times businesses make these decisions based off of a rear-facing view because they have the context up to that point and say, well, this is how we make money. This is what we've always done. But with AI, it kind of drops in today and there's like this unknown world, right? So do you go down the path that you understand or the path that you have no clue on? And it's like, if you go down one, you're almost like you're paralyzed by the unknown, but you're restricted.
Yeah, you can't just, this is technology, right? So if you are a technologist, you can't just stick with what you know because...
Well, touche, but like you said, if you're a technologist, people in business...
But almost everybody is using technology, right?
But the people that make decisions in business aren't necessarily technologists.
But they're the ones...
Well, yeah, but they're demanding the use of AI. Like I mentioned, there's no company on this planet that's does not have an AI strategy today. It's impossible because boards, directors, your lawn service company probably has an AI strategy on how to better book their clients and get, feedback. It's here. Like I said, a lot of people try to say, I'll deal with it when it gets here, or I'm not going to deal with that right now. It's too late. It's here. It's moving all around you. And if your business isn't adopting and using AI to be more efficient, better customer service, better product, lower prices, then you're losing out, period.
Okay. And so now everyone's being forced to use AI, right? So where does the chain of custody for their actions come into place?
That's a good Troy question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you think about it, it's just an evolution of every revolution we've seen, from the Industrial Revolution into cars, from horses, buggies, cars. Here we are with, technology, computers, humans, and now AI, where you're getting efficiency side by side, hands on keyboard and AI. So that chain of custody has to end, like I said, with the identity of the employee who is responsible for that tool or that agent. If it's a technology tool, that's the CIO. If it's a sales tool, it's a salesperson. If it's a business tool, it's the CFO.
You're saying overall, right,
like
Troy? Because I don't know if that's going to be clear. That's the problem. I think conceptually, yeah, I agree with that. But at what point, like how many degrees of separation from, let's say, the CIO? Because you could argue that, okay, it's technology, so the CIO is the one on the hook for everything.
No, it's now the chief AI officer. Almost, if you look at most large companies, they have appointed someone to be responsible for this, and that's the chief AI officer. And so you're seeing that pop up, and
Is that fair to the chief AI officer if they don't know about it?
yeah, they're
Let's say
coming in with more flexibility than we ever had, Damian, in IT or cyber, and they have 3 times as large of a budget. So it's absolutely fair.
I got to make a career switch again, I guess.
Yeah, me too. I gotta start selling AI security and just go for the AI person.
Yeah, and remember, this is not just security. We think about it in cybersecurity respects, but AI is, the chief AI officer was talking about, the chief data protection, chief data officer. They're all mixed into one now, where AI is touching every aspect of the business, and we're having to not only secure it, but think about procuring it and making sure that it's empowering the business, aligning business drivers to an AI strategy, aligning business risk with AI strategy. That's the chief AI officer's job. And I think that at the end of the day, they have to own all of those risks and technology and, that chain of custody with the assistance of all the business stakeholders that we've always had: technology, finance, general counsel, CISO, etc.
That's a lot to digest for me. Troy's, I don't know. I always say this on every episode, but like Troy's an animal. So
This is a good topic. It's my favorite. So thank you, Fern.
So, okay. So what are you supposed to do then when you have everyone pushing it, right? And the business wants to do it. And like Troy says, if you don't do it, you're being left behind, right? So there is now this struggle between innovation, right? We'll call it productivity / innovation, but then you have governance, right? I think that's just like the battle, right? Is like IGA the future of some of these companies that are out there? Like, is that where things are headed? Because if you're not on the IGA front,
I think it's more than that, just identity governance, right? I think that's a part of it. One of the things that you have to, and like think of the entire problem of identity in this case. One, you got to be able to identify all of these agentic identities. Right? But Troy said if it leads back to a human, that human's responsible for it. But then, there's multiple degrees of separation, because you might have an agentic AI agent that spins up another agent that spins up another agent, and so forth. And then how do you trace that back, the lineage, right? So I think there's some problems around that, unless you can have a tool that will be able to identify these agents and then draw that lineage back to the origin and how it started, and maybe even how long it's been alive or active. And does it still have the same scope of access? Because over time it was going to evolve. Right.
So when you say scope, are you talking about like drift?
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to happen, because if you're not keeping tabs on it, it may just say, well, I need to do some additional stuff to try to make my job easier, right? So just like the human is like, hey, I'm going to use AI to make my job easier. The AI agents are going to be like, well, I can do this faster if I just do this. And it may not be what you want. Or it might be like, I can do this faster if I spin up 3 other agents, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's, from an identity perspective, you have, first of all, let's identify the agentic identities, and then also figure out what scope or what access they have access to. And then that governance piece is just revalidating that they should have that access. But what about privilege? Do we need to escalate privilege within those agents? How does that work? Does that come back to a human to say, hey, I need to go outside my bounds? Is that okay? And then do you have the right mechanism to promote the privilege? And then for how long?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what's crazy about that is, what I feel like was going to happen or will happen in a situation like that is, like we've talked about before, like alert fatigue, like where people constantly get like these SMS texts on their phone, and then eventually they're just like, whatever, like do this, boom, right? So imagine you have like 1,000 agents that you're the human in the middle, like you're the human in line with the process. Like, that job has got to be.
Well, then you delegate it to other agents.
Yeah, but
that's true. But I don't know that anybody should have 1,000 agents reporting to them. Maybe there's a use case I'm not thinking of, but You want to limit the number of agents that you create that have access to you. Now, Damian mentioned the hierarchy of agents reporting to agents reporting to agents. I mean, that might work in certain very specific instances, but for the efficiencies and the automation of tasks, I think that you can certainly do it with fewer agents.
No, I mean, and I'll disagree there because I want to compartmentalize my agents, much like
Narcos.
micro-segmentation of networks and servers, right? If I have one server or one user only has access to one server, that's kind of the association I'm thinking. And so if I have an agent, I only want that agent to do one specific thing, and then maybe another agent to do a very specific thing, and have them very know that they're very good at these things. I don't know. It's I don't see it as one agent doing everything. I think that's a little bit too risky. I want to compartmentalize it.
Yeah, for sure.
Segment it. So that's why I think that way.
Yeah, there's a balance there for sure.
Yeah, micro-segmentation for agents.
Is there a company doing that yet?
There is, and we know she's in Scottsdale. I'll put it that way.
Oh, well, obviously we know who that is, right? We can say her name, can't we? We can say the name. Well, if you guys are looking for micro-segmentation, Elicity, we'll just say that, right? But I mean, micro-segmentation of AI agents specifically was where I was going.
Absolutely, and I think that let's take Elicity as an example. I think they were positioned well, and this is not a commercial. I'm not getting paid to say this, but they were positioned well early. They did micro-segmentation for network and data and other things. That when AI popped up 6 months, a year ago, they started developing agentic AI micro-segmentation. So they're doing that now. We talked about that at RSA. Elicity was a first mover advantage on micro-segmentation for agents. That's why I mentioned their name. There's others that are trying to get there, but Elicity was uniquely positioned because they were already doing micro-segmentation very well to be there for agents.
Yeah, so that back to your question about architecture, this gets deeper into it because as you start to push out agents, you got to think about how do I manage an army of agents, and that's one way I think about it. Now, what do we name them? Maybe there's a strategy of everything named after stars. I don't know, how many stars can you name? Probably not enough, right? Yeah. Well, okay. So maybe if you're named after a star, you have one function. If you're named after a 1980s wrestler, you have another function. If you're named after a cartoon character, you have another function, and then that way you remember, oh yeah, Hulk Hogan, I know what you do,
R.I.P. to the man. So Hulk. So you know what? It's almost like you're creating objects and classes, right? Like you have the object of the star, but you know that it has whatever assets with it as part of being a star, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's one strategy, but you're gonna lose track. I mean, we use that same concept with project names, and I lose track of project names after we hit 20. I'm like, well, what is that again? And I have to go back and look at the description. So I forget what the name of the project really relates to.
Okay. Bottom line is, there's not going to be a shortage of jobs in the future, right? There's going to be a lot of people that need help. And if you're leading the way when it comes to securing AI, you're probably going to be making a bunch of money in the next 24 months, as long as you got a good product, right? Okay, well, so let's see here. So we talked about essentially shadow AI. We talked about how these things can run wild on their own. We talked about the governance of this, right? The struggle between innovation and governance, which is kind of like this. It's almost like an extension of the struggle between making money and security saying no. Now it's a struggle of that money is a function of. There's probably a graph somewhere that shows how agents are able to contribute to a financial, meaningful dollar value to a business. So if you say, oh, more agents, more money, right? The business is like, we want more money, get more agents, right? There's probably that direct connection. But now it's, instead of having a person or technology, it's now these agents pushing, and it's maybe it's 10 to 1, 20 to 1. So the technology versus the no or the guardrails is now financially incentivized because now they're trying to get 10x of their money with these agents. And it's like, well, how do we make sure that we don't get 10x the problems, right? Mo money, mo problems. You guys know the song.
I mean, that's a good point, right? Because we're moving so fast. So are you introducing more problems? Probably. But the hope is that, you are introducing more efficiencies than you are creating problems, because if you can't move fast enough in security, the attacker's already moving light speeds around you.
Yeah. So it's a balance between, and this is going to sound so cliche, enabling the business while protecting it at the same time. Now, you want to allow them to make the money, but not allow threat actors to get in and cause, damage.
Exactly. Let's just do that.
Yeah, that's someone take that note real quick. Someone write that down, because that's easy to do, right? Okay. Well, I think we're getting close to our rough 1 hour window. We talked about a lot of random things, but a lot of good things, right? And I think what I'm taking away from the conversation is that governance is probably the single most important part for people in security today, right? If identity was the biggest part, for the last few years, maybe now it's the governance of agents, right?
But I would argue you can't govern what you don't know. So you need to have the visibility, you need to have the guardrails, you need to be able to put in at least the tools to have you have a shot at governing it.
Yeah. Okay. So you're basically saying you can't build a house without the foundation, right? The foundation being visibility and guardrails, controls. And at that point, that's where the governance pops up.
Yeah. Because you can't govern what you can't see.
True. Troy, what kind of closing nuggets you got for us?
This is such an interesting and fast-moving dynamic. The closing statement here is just, if you're a technologist, if you're a cybersecurity expert, you need to stay on top of this and don't get caught behind, because, before you could catch up pretty quickly and catch back up to the crowd. But now if you're even a day or two or a week behind on technology, where it's going in AI, you're going to be light years behind your peers and be left behind. So that, plus the agentic AI coming for your job, just remember, lean into AI, learn it quickly, have some test labs at home, understand all this nuance between the new functionality so that you can position yourself to be invaluable to your company.
Yeah. And if you don't have time to stay ahead of the curve and be in the know or on the bleeding edge, I hope you at least have an hour a week, because there's one spot that you can go to get all this information. Damian, what's the name of that place? Let me pull it up real quick on my computer. You know what it is, right? Where people can go to get all that information to stay up to date on the latest security
The
news?
DTF Cyber Podcast.
The DTF Cyber Podcast. Like, if you're listening and you want to have a weekly episode of all the top security topics.
I don't know. Did they pay for a commercial on this or what?
Who, the DTF Cyber Podcast? I don't think they did. Yep. No, my pockets are still empty, so no one paid us. But yeah, I think in terms of like all the things that we talk about, it's kind of actually pretty cool to see that as we're going through. So by the way, like today's episode is what, episode 39? Episode number 2 came out 10 months ago. So
I was wondering if we're getting on to about a year.
Well, yeah, because remember the very first episode that we did? Where is it? I'm pulling it up real quick. I'm trying to see what day it was actually.
I think it was like first week of May or something like that.
Yeah, maybe it was. It says 10 months ago as of right now is what's posted. So we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary. So I don't have any closing thoughts. That's why I asked you guys. So that, I think episode 39, right? Yeah. Maybe. Okay. Doesn't matter. It's probably episode 40 and I'm just wrong. But we'll be back next week. Hope you enjoyed the conversation today around AI, shadow AI to be specific. And we'll be back next week with another fun topic to keep you in the know. Take care.
DTF Cyber, we back in the zone. We back in the zone. 39 on the dial. Leave the doubt at home. Leave the doubt at home. Damian, Troy, and Fern, we the cyber kings, talking about the ghost it brings. Shadow agent paying Vossies, that's a check. That's a check. That's a check.